and we're still seeing a CR6. So even without the acid damage that would be coming in from the pseudopod, we're looking at a CR6 even though it says CR5 here. But for the time being, let's take a look at the Dragonblood Ooze that Price had suggested. It's on page 182 of the book if you have it. So it's supposed to be a large ooze, so we'll go ahead and swap that in. So we have a large ooze. Let's see here. It should be CR, 5? With, let's see, 14 AC, 8 D10 hit points, with 18 strength, 6 dex, 17 constitution, 2 intellect, 12 wisdom, 10 charisma. After that, the Dragonblood Ooze has the following. We have acid, cold, fire, lightning, and poison for damage resistances. So we'll go ahead and put that in to give our monster an extra 50% hit points. After that, we'll move into the monster traits now that we're done with the skills area. And we'll see that the ooze has amorphous. The ooze can move through spaces and such that are an inch wide without squeezing. That doesn't help with the CR, so that'll be no... Yeah, it doesn't affect the CR. There we go. And then also, the Dragonblood Ooze has Spider Climb. This also has no effect on the CR whatsoever. So we can actually skip through all of the monster traits and just move right down into the attack actions. So we'll see for the Ooze, we have a multi-attack. The Ooze makes 2 pseudopod attacks. The Ooze can replace 1 pseudopod attack with its slime breath if available. Alright, and we have, let's see here, +7 to hit with the pseudopod. We're going to take a look at the pseudopod now. So we have, let's see here, we got 1 target dealing 9.5 points of damage. So we'll go ahead and do +4, so we're getting 9.5 for the pseudopod, with an additional 14 points of acid damage coming from 4d6. So that works out perfectly fine. And if the target is a large or smaller creature, it is grappled. Until the grapple ends, the target takes 7 acid damage at the start of each of its turns. In cases like this, we would only assume 2. So for the pseudopod, I'm going to suggest that we give it +2 effective AC. And then on top of that, let's see here, we'll get attack number 1 all put together of the 9.5 plus the 14 for a total of 23.5 damage. And then until the grapple ends, the target takes 7 acid damage as well at the start of each of its turns. Well, let's move on to the slime breath before we figure out rounds of combat. And the slime breath, let's see here. The ooze expels a spray of its gelatinous mass in a 30-foot cube. Or cone, excuse me. Alright, so we can go ahead and throw in the 4d10 there for that 22 points of damage. And what was the multi-attack? The multi-attack was 2... Okay, so we have 2 different versions. We've got the first one, which is the 22. We do the slime breath and then a pseudopod. And the second one will be pseudopod times 2. So round 1 will be the slime breath and the pseudopod. And then from there, we would have 1 creature grappled, and the grappled creature at the start of each of its turns will take 7 points of damage. So we could add in 7 points of damage there. So round 1 we would see probably about 52.5 points of damage. Rounds 2 and 3 will be the same thing here, which will be just 47 damage for 2 pseudopod attacks, plus 7 points of damage there, but we need to multiply that times 2 as well. So, we'll just do that plus that. So we'll have 2 targets now that are grappled and taking acid damage, and we'll multiply that by 2 for 2 rounds of combat for rounds 2 and 3, since it's the same. And we see we have a full attack of 58 points of damage for all 3 rounds of combat. So we're looking at probably more likely a CR7 here. As we can see here, high damage with low defenses and whatnot. Now let's see what happens if we take out the extra acid damage from creatures being grappled all too often. And we're still seeing a CR6. So even without the acid damage that would be coming in from the pseudopod and being grappled and it being that caustic and deadly, we're looking at a CR6 even though it says CR5 here. So this is definitely an underrated monster. How could we fix it? And probably the first thing I would suggest is take off damage resistances. And now we have a CR5. So more than likely, this was not having the damage resistances accounted for to come up with the CR5. So there we have it. Balanced, even rated at CR5, provided we ignore damage resistances. Otherwise, we could be seeing as high as a CR7.